Hi guys, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we hop into this episode, just wanted to give a little bit of a warning on some sensitive topics that we're going to be covering, such as pornography, abuse, and suicidal ideations. If these are going to be sensitive for you, just wanted to give you a heads up. We pray that the Lord works through these and that He's able to speak to you through this story, but we do want to be transparent in what we're going to be talking about today. But I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks.
Welcome back to the Tell Me Your Story podcast, a podcast where we have our friends and our family on to share their stories and just kind of how they came to meet Jesus and kind of their whole life testimonies. Today we have the lovely Sarah Gilmore on to share her story. Sarah, thank you for making this happen. Thank you for kind of adapting to our schedule, and thank you for being here.
So excited to be here with you guys.
Yes, we're so pumped to have you. I was saying I'm actually giddy for this one. I think I lost sleep over you coming on. I'm just so excited and so encouraged. And I know that this is really going to impact somebody in a really profound way. So we're so excited.
I'm honored to be here.
Yes, we're honored to have you.
Yeah. Sarah is a devoted follower of Jesus. She is a wife to our pastor, Trey, who's a great man. Shout out, Trey. She has an amazing story, and we can't wait to get into it.
Yes.
Sarah, tell us where you grew up and take us back to early childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take us back to Texas.
To Texas. Yes. Thank y'all. I got to say that. I got to get my y'all in. I'm from Texas, Austin, Texas, live music capital of the world, they say. I don't know if it would still be because Nashville is competing with Austin. But I did ask Siri on my way here, and she said, still the live music capital of the world.
Siri's never lied.
Confirmed.
Right. Born and raised in Austin. I was there for 25 years. Mm-hmm. Absolutely loved it. I love to share just a little bit of context about my parents.
Yeah.
And I think that will help kind of frame a little bit moving forward.
For sure.
Yeah.
But my mom, she's from Long Island, New York. I was raised by a New Yorker, so I was not raised by a Texan. A lot of people ask me, where's my Texas accent? And that's why.
Yeah.
She, after high school, traveled the world and was a hippie, truly a hippie.
Yeah.
She traveled
Woodstock.
Yeah. She missed it. She was maybe 15 at the time, and she begged her mom to go, and she couldn't. But yeah, that was her vibe for sure. Yes.
Do you think I'm just curious, for her growing up, would your grandparents have been hippies also, or was that kind of, she was off on?
So she was a Polish girl.
Yeah.
Her parents, her grandparents traveled over to become Americans.
Yeah.
And so her parents were really specific about her being raised in just a really rigid, proper home. They didn't really want her to be an immigrant. And so they were not thrilled that that was her bent. And that was a big part of her story. So when she left high school, she traveled. She was, everywhere, all over North America, South America. And then she landed in Austin. Okay. And one thing I'll just say about her background is she carried a lot of pain with her.
Yeah.
She had a lot going on in her life. And she just found a lot of freedom in the whole revolution of drugs, sex, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
So she landed in Austin, Texas. She met my dad, who is a musician, very devoted to music. He's a guitar player. He's from California mostly, and he kind of also is a nomad. And he left high school and landed in Austin and played music there. And my mom and dad met in Austin, and fell pregnant with my sister, Katie, and they got married kind of out of duty, and 6 years later they had me. And I'll say, even though my parents were married, it wasn't a traditional marriage. Yeah. It was pretty fraught with some of the similar vibes of drug, sex, and rock and roll.
Dad probably gone a lot with playing music, stuff like that.
Yeah, often gone. That's a lot of how he made money. He had his own struggles and his own hang-ups. So they had me about 6 years later. Mm-hmm. And when I was 2 years old, they divorced. It very tumultuous relationship, really, really tough. Yeah. So my mom got custody of us, and she worked really, really hard. She was an amazing mom. She loved being a mom, and it was just so evident that that was like her dream in life. So she really tried hard to just provide for us. And one of the things I do want to note, because trigger warning, there will be maybe some things shared that might be hard to hear, but I always like to highlight that even though my mom had her struggles, she really went to like a really far extent, even I think than most families, to celebrate heavy traditions on like Christmas and our birthdays. So it's funny, like I tell people about my story, but I also tell them about all these traditions I had as a kid, and they're like, wait, it just doesn't make sense. And it's my mom, my story, it really doesn't make sense. But she really did a lot of special things to make us feel like loved and cared for.
Good. Yeah. Okay. So if you want to kind of just talk a little bit about maybe like your sister, like you guys growing up, like what was that dynamic, and kind of just take us through like as you're getting a little bit older.
Yeah. So my sister and I, 6 years apart.
Yeah.
We're very, very different.
Was she like letting you tag along?
No.
Okay.
A lot of fighting.
Yeah.
It was really tough.
Yeah.
I was definitely a nuisance to her. She's just so smart and so brilliant, and I was just pining for her love and attention. She's an artist. She's so talented, but she was 6 years older, and with that, with all the things that we were facing, she ran one way and I ran another. So with that, I'll just segue into kind of some of the harder years with that to explain a little bit of the context there. So one thing to note about my upbringing is that we really didn't have a lot of family or friends around us to support us. One of those people, though, that did love us very well was my mom's father, my grandpa. He would often visit, and he was just such an amazing man. But he got ill from cancer and ended up passing away. And that, for my mom, she had already lost a parent. She had already lost her mother when she was 30. It really like wrecked her. And she just faced kind of like a downward spiral of like self-medicating again. Yeah. So a lot more drinking, and she would often go out on the weekends and leave my sister and I alone. And even though my sister was 16 years old and she could, I guess, technically take care of us, or she wasn't maybe 16 yet, but I was about 7. She's 6 years older. She was a teenager.
Yeah, 13.
Yeah. So she wasn't in like a parenting position.
And that was never, I mean, she still to this day does not have kids. That is not something she ever wanted to do or be in. So it was a really tough thing. And there's a lot of memories of me crying at night and just being so fearful. Like, Mom, is she going to come back? Like, can you call her? And bothering my sister a lot. Yeah. And my sister just being like, can you just accept, like, she's doing adult things and, you know, there's nothing I can do. And I think my sister was really doing her best. Yeah. But that was like my first grappling. I had already felt a lot of it with like my father leaving, even though I don't have memory of that. I have heard stories about me really struggling when I was very, very little. Yeah. But that's my most recognizable time that I could realize, like, oh, I am terrified of what's next, my next day. Like, is my mom going to survive? Is she going to come home? Because when you're a little girl and your mom's gone maybe like a night, or she comes home incapacitated, because I'd often try to stay up and wait for her, and I'd see her come home. And as a little kid, you don't understand, like, oh, my mom's stumbling in and slurring her words, or maybe coming home with someone, and you just don't get it. It doesn't feel stable. It doesn't feel secure. Yeah.
And it's like, it's hard because with a parent, you kind of put them on a pedestal because they're the grown up in your life. Absolutely. And they're like, it probably doesn't even, you don't really realize their flaws until later in life. Or you kind of, you look back on those memories and you're like, oh, I see what was going on there. Like it's just really hard to pick up on that. But there's like an energy, there's a vibe, especially with being alone so much, that I can understand how fear kind of crept in, and I'm assuming that type of childhood fear sticks for a while, which we'll get into.
Yeah, we'll touch on that for sure.
Which, in like, now, you know, like, Jesus is your security, but as a child you're like, my parent is like supposed to provide and protect and to not feel like you had that security. Definitely enters a season of fear.
Yes. One thing to note is that my mom and dad did have faith. That they did have, in a way, like a spiritual framework, but it wasn't rooted in like surrendering anything over. They both carried so much pain with them, like trusting authority. Like, no, that wasn't a thing. So I would say even at this time, I remember being like, God, why? Yeah. Like, and really being angry at him and having like an idea of something bigger. Like, oh, there's something apparently out there, but it's not helping me. Yeah. It was a lot of anger at first towards just this concept, not understanding like the true.
How do you think that was instilled in you? Was it your mom? Would she
absolutely.
Like make comments about God, or would she pray with you guys at all? Would she teach you how to pray, or not really?
Yeah, my mom was, I would say, like a conversational prayer. You know, like we would get into a hard situation. Oh God, help us! We need you, kind of thing, right out loud. You know, she really would call upon the Lord a lot. Yeah. I did come to find out later in life, though. I mean, she spent so much time journaling prayers, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But she constantly had this little manila notepad, and I would find them once I could read later, and it would say like, "Dear God," and it would have like her whole like supplication for the day of like what she was asking the Lord for.
So she definitely had a surface level faith.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, she was raised Catholic and even was confirmed in the Catholic Church, but she just saw a lot of restriction and rigidity. She would always talk about. It's just like void of like joy and happiness.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, the hippie movement and the Catholic Church do not go hand in hand.
Yes. It was the perfect antidote to her like disdain. But I think there was a lot of the Catholic Church that did make her fall in love with Jesus.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. But she did have a rosary at times and would pray those prayers. I do remember that. I actually haven't thought of that in a long time. Yeah. So yes, while she was gone, a lot of nightmares is another thing that started during this time. And I was just really gripped. At the end of the day, I just wanted my mom to like be done with this behavior or whatever. So one night she had brought home an individual and she was incapacitated, and I stumbled out into the living room and she was incapacitated, but the individual was awake, and I was really upset, and I was trying to wake her up. I mean, I had thought maybe she was not alive anymore. I didn't understand, but he had encouraged me like to just help him wake her up. And unfortunately, I was molested that night. I was 7. It was like really hard, sure. But I had seen so much at that point that it was just like, oh, okay, if this is what I need to do to get my mom free, I'll do it. But I think the hardest thing was that CPS got involved. I told some teachers, and that was a big fear. This individual also introduced my mom to crack cocaine. And while my mom had experimented with drugs in the past, like she would talk about later in life, like it just was the one that did it for her.
It's a whole different animal.
It did something in her brain. She had tried so many other things. I mean, so much, but that for some reason just did what her brain needed. And she was hooked. So all of this storm was happening. And some of the lies that I can now say were the enemy that I started to believe about myself was, I'm a liar, I'm not trustworthy, I'm a nuisance. Just to see these people I was trying to help, like my mom, and it was, and to try to, get the teachers or other people involved.
Did your mom blame you for that?
Yeah, I would say at the time she did. Yeah.
With CPS getting involved and everything.
Because you were always kind of told, like, what happens at home, like, we don't talk about outside of the home.
Yes.
And just that fear of losing your mom.
Yes.
Like, you loved her obviously so much, and not wanting to be apart from her. She was like your one like normal or like constant. So
I didn't have a circle of community around me. There really wasn't, like, my mom didn't have friends other than like drinking buddies or her different boyfriends that she had at the time, and we didn't have any family. So my mom was my world, truly. I mean, she was my idol. You had, I think, said that word earlier. I really looked up to her. I saw her as an incredible woman that I just needed to like help set free, get her back on track.
Yeah, if you can just do this for her, then she'll be the good mom that you remembered.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I got myself into, I say a lot of trouble. My therapist once later in life was like, you were trying to do the best you can, and I can look back with a lot of grace. But I think in my family's perception was like, Sarah, why are you making this so hard on everyone? Like the more you mess with mom, the more she spirals, the more you try to tell people our business, the more we're threatened to be broken apart. And I just couldn't help myself though. Like that was just my proclivity, is to just, to keep trying to fix it. It was kind of my identity, is maybe a better word.
Yeah. So in the midst of kind of like believing those lies about yourself, where would you kind of say that your faith was at that time? If you had faith, like, what did that look like?
I would say the majority of my prayers would be, Jesus, if you're real, show yourself to me. Jesus, if you're real, fix my mom. There was a van that would drive through our neighborhood, and a friend of mine down the street that I would sometimes hang out with, she hopped on this van one day in the middle of us playing together, and I was like, how dare you leave me? And I found out it was a church van, and so I think I got my mom's permission to just hop on it one day. It's just what happens.
Just hop on a random van. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm picturing like The Office when they try to start Michael Scott's paper company, like, and they rent that van. Like, this is what I'm picturing.
It could have been a paper company I was going to. Oh yeah, maybe. I heard it's a thing that churches did like in the 90s.
Yeah.
Is they have these white vans. They may still do it, but they like go and pick up kids in the hood.
I feel like picking up kids. I feel like picking up kids in a van has a whole nother connotation to it now, that churches might have stopped doing that.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see Trey rolling around in a van.
Yeah, hopefully not. I don't know if it's the best strategy for today, but I do remember getting on that van. I do remember there being some talk about Jesus, and I have like faint visuals of like maybe a classroom or like a church hall or something, and maybe doing a coloring page. But I didn't have like a lot of depth to that, but it was a safe thing to do. And so I do like to give credit to that. Like, who knows, maybe there was people like praying over me then.
Yeah.
And I just like to believe that.
Isn't that so cool to be like, years and years ago? I think that about my story sometimes. It's like there's certain situations where I'm like, I know that people were praying for me, and like you don't see that until like years down the road. So that's so cool.
I'll even like your mom in her journal. Like, I don't know how strong her faith was, but Jesus hears every prayer, even if there's not a ton of faith behind it. So,
and I was thinking too, just back to her, like when you said we're talking about her her journaling prayers, and like how that has played out in your life specifically today. Like, you are the director of prayer, and you feel like that's something that the Lord has really put on your heart. So that's just, I feel like, a cool kind of full circle moment.
Prayer is just the strongest and most powerful thing we can do.
Yeah.
There's just so much cool stories and just proof that God loves for us to just come to him. Mm-hmm. And I've fallen in love with prayer. It's so good.
Yeah. So at that time, you're in the church van. Mm-hmm. Are you, your relationship with Jesus, you would say you are more looking for like tangible signs from him?
Yeah, it's interesting because like even looking back, I can say, yeah, there was dashes of Jesus, but oh, my God was pain. My idol was pain. I was like a wretched little, like I had a lot of fun still. Yeah. I did a lot of crazy little kid things, like would go to the creek 2 miles away and dig around in the water and find turtles and stuff that like probably most kids wouldn't have done. I lived like a crazy little life, but I was in a lot of pain and I was really hurting. One of the things that I actually found during that time was porn. Mm-hmm. I stumbled across porn magazines in my mom's bedroom, and then DVDs, and not even DVDs, it was VCR tapes. And as a 7, 8, 9-year-old little girl, that became like my escape. That became like a way of me to medicate. And like looking back, I don't even think I fully understood. I think at the time I thought I did. I thought I was like a little adult and I knew everything. But it just became this drug of my own. Like as a little kid, I was like, this is how I find my release. This is like exhilarating. And that became something that was my own addiction for a long time.
Would you say that was a secret from everyone?
I mean, it was pretty screaming. Like there definitely were times where I would like to get myself into really, when I say it's screaming, like I don't think it was easily hidden from the people around me. And I think like my sister and my mom, they knew that I was struggling. They knew that that was a thing. But at the end of the day, they had no capacity to provide any bit of security.
I mean, it was in the house, right?
Yes.
Like it was like, that's where you first got introduced to it, in your own home?
Yep.
Yeah.
So with my mom being addicted to crack cocaine, my home became like a revolving door for other addicts, and drugs were very, I saw them. I experienced my mom in really tough situations on them, other people, a lot of fighting. There was a lot of abuse, like physical abuse, because if I hadn't heard from my mom all day, I would just go bang on the door and be like, what are y'all doing? And, people didn't like that. And so there was, of course, for them, that was disruptive to what they were trying to accomplish. So there was a lot of abuse. But yeah, so my home was like, it was chaos. There was no like, oh, protect this child. They had other things. And I think when you're an addict, and what I've come to know now is like your addict brain takes over. My mom, not on drugs, would never, ever, ever allow that. Right. But it had hijacked her brain. And so at the time, though, I didn't, I couldn't articulate that. Right. I couldn't make sense of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you just for sharing that and being so vulnerable. So as you're kind of, progressing like 7, 8, like 9, 10, where do you go from there? Like, are you like, you're going to public school, like at the same time, all this is happening, like.
Yeah, so I was in public school, and I would say like it's really interesting because there's not a lot of memory of like that, of stability. There's a lot more memory around some of the harsher things. Yeah. I think I was kind of given a little bit of grace from my teachers to like not actually, turn in assignments or like be there. We got all of our clothes from shelters and even our food from shelters. And there was times I didn't have shoes to wear to school. And I think my teachers knew that. There was an incredible amount of generosity. And I will say to a little kid who just wants to be normal, to be given something like a free pair of shoes, or there was several things I was a part of where like a high school class adopted me for Christmas, and I got to go to the high school, and they like showered me with gifts. And that is I look back at being like, that was the hands and feet of Jesus, even though I don't know if those people were believers, but it was so radical to me because as a little kid, your status is your clothes, it's your shoes. That's what gives you status as a little kid. So to go to school and not have a pair of shoes might feel like functionally a problem to us as adults, but like to a little kid, it felt like, well, how do I even have friends? Like, how do I even like...
Because at that age, you're just trying not to get bullied, basically.
Yes. Yes.
Or it's like, what's the coolest toy? Like, what did everyone get for Christmas?
Yes.
Like
and that was never a conversation I really got to be a part of. I would say, my mom was so intent on providing a childhood for us amidst this. She would like pawn things to get us gifts, you know? And at the worst of it, she would pawn it to get, drugs, but she really did try despite like her own hangups. But yeah, those years were really tough. I think I spent a lot of time in the counselor's office. I would often go to school with bruises on my body. And it's really sad thinking back now, but at the time it just felt like just like a normal thing. And so there was a lot of me lying, a lot of me like meeting with CPS and telling them maybe my mom beat me or maybe her boyfriend beat me, but I don't want to tell you that because then what's going to happen? And it's interesting now, like even being a part of different ministries we're a part of, and these kiddos who are so angry when they get adopted or in foster care or provided respite, and you really think like at the end of the day, these are their parents. This is all they've ever known. And sometimes they'd rather be in the chaos of that home than free, right? Because your version of free is maybe not theirs. And so, it's an interesting season.
Yeah. Do you remember, this is kind of just me wondering, but like during that time, was there anyone that was like trying to remove you from that situation? Like, did CPS ever do anything drastic? Like, were you ever removed from the home?
Foster at all?
That it was often said, like, if you just speak up on the recorder, because we cannot, like, have a very vivid memory of telling my counselor what had happened, but when the counselor reported it to CPS, they couldn't actually do anything because I refused to put it on a recorder.
Yeah.
And so they spent like 2 hours in the school conference room saying, like, I would whisper it and they'd be like, we have to hear it on the recorder. I don't know. There was... so
it was almost like their hands were tied because of the legal loopholes and
That's
things
exactly
like that.
right. But they would say often things like, we can help you. Because I would be like a lawyer. I'd be like, no, I'm not going to tell you until I know... I'm not kidding. Until I know you can help my mom. Like, I don't want to be away from her. I need you to help her. She's sick. I would often say that. She's sick. She needs your help. And they would say, we can help her the best we can, but the best thing we can do is provide a safe place for you to be right now. And I just hated that. I didn't like that at all. But there was a time where my mom... There's a very vivid memory I had of my mom really struggling with me one day. And I think it was around CPS because when CPS came, they had to kind of close up shop and, kind of like act like everything was normal in the home. And after I think it was a visit, I can't remember exactly, but my mom had packed up my bags and just like left me at my dad's. My dad lived in a van for most of his life, like a converted van. I thought it was very cool as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I lived with him for 30 days because it was reported, and I had to stay with my dad in a van, which was actually kind of fun. Yeah. But that was the extent of me actually being removed from the home. I think the hardest part of that memory and experience was just being rejected by my mom.
Was the possibility of going into a foster home like a big fear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you still had this. You were under the mindset of, if my mom can get help, everything's going to go back to normal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And essentially, you were right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did your sister come along with you, or was she old enough to kind of do her own thing?
My sister really only had like physical harm like once. I mean, there was a lot of emotional abuse that she saw, but she actually was never really physically harmed other than one time. And she was often away, and she often didn't experience a lot of the things I experienced because she had that autonomy to leave as a teenager.
Right. She could kind of keep herself out of the way.
Yeah. And she's much more introverted than I am. She doesn't like chaos. So, I mean, she would just tune out and read a book. In our room. And if anything crazy was happening, she just didn't, she just wanted to, that's her own, coping mechanism. I can understand.
Yeah. And so when you were with your dad, did you feel like you were like safe and supported when you were with him?
Yeah, but I was very eager to get back to my mom. My dad and I have just such a tender relationship. He is amazing, and he's always believed in me, but he has really struggled to be there for me. And I think there was several instances why that was the case. I mean, our home was very, very, very chaotic and hard. And so I spent a lot of time really missing my father and wishing we were closer. But I'll share kind of where it goes from there. Is when I was about like 10 or 11, my mom and her boyfriend at the time had a pretty serious fight in the morning that had woken me up, and he had left. And my mom was in really bad shape, and I could tell, and I was alone. I don't know where my sister was. She wasn't there, but it was just me and my mom. And I was really concerned for her. And
like her physical
health
well-being,
or physical well-being. And I mean, at this time, she was extremely thin, extremely thin. And just also she had been pretty badly beaten, and I wasn't sure what she was dealing with. And so I called my dad, and I was like, hey, I need you to come here. Like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. And he was like, I'm nervous. The boyfriend's going to come back. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So he said, I'm going to call the cops. I was like, don't call the cops. Don't do it. Don't call the cops.
That's not allowed.
He's like, I'm going to call the cops. So he called the cops, and at that point, it was like the gig is up. Like there was no more hiding. I mean, there was like cocaine spread out all over the coffee table that I wasn't going to touch, you know, and she was too incapacitated to be able to like clean up the situation. And pictures were taken. She was taken to the hospital with some pretty severe facial fractures. It's a miracle that she, healed through that. But with that it all kind of came out.
Right.
And I remember my dad coming to the hospital and saying, like, you're going to live with me now. And it was a big mix of feelings. Like, I was so excited to, like, finally have time with my dad.
Yeah.
But being away from my mom was scary. She assured me at the time she'd be fine. Yeah. And so, my dad got custody of us. Yeah. And moved us out to a little town about 45 minutes. Well, it was about 45 minutes at the time because it was like a country from Austin called Leander, Texas, and a little trailer and
pretty rural.
Yeah, at the time. It's Leander. If anyone from Texas is hearing me say that now, they're like, what?
Is that like a suburb of Austin now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like how far would you say it was from your mom's?
It was about like 45 at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was like Schwebeling and these little country roads like that were not even paved. Like,
This is the 90s.
Yes, it was. So I say Leander, but we called it Lander.
Yeah.
It was Lander, Texas.
Yeah.
So that helps.
That's how the Texans say it.
Yeah, that's how the Texans say it. Well, the Leander folks do at least. Or
sounds like they would maybe have some good food there.
Yeah, some Mexican actually. Yeah, there's some really good Mexican food.
Yeah.
I lived out there. It was like 11, and so I was in it was fourth grade, so maybe 10 to 11. It was pretty great being with my dad. It was like pretty lovely, even though we didn't have like hot water or even water at times. Like I still felt really safe there. My dad, though, often was not there, just playing gigs, music, working. So more time alone. But I think there was like this period of me trying to be normal. Like, what does it look like now, being a normal kid?
Yeah.
And it was difficult.
Were you like, did you go to a different school?
Yeah,
there?
whole different school.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, totally different school.
Yeah.
So they didn't know me. They didn't know my background.
It's like making new friends.
Yep.
Were you like, I can like make my own identity, like I can start new?
Yeah, but I was still I was really struggling inwardly. I really had a lot of like suicidal ideation, and I had therapy. Even the time that I was with my my mom, I was a part of a couple different like therapeutic programs for kids that just were not that were in tough situations, and I can credit therapy to being such a rock through the story. But when I was with my father, I started to more regularly attend therapy, and that's when I started to face some of the like severity of what I had just gone through.
Would that be your teachers getting you into therapy, or was your father getting you into those things?
It was like a both and. I would say I would often go to the counselor and I would share, and a guidance counselor can only help you so much, like the school counselor, and they would provide like free therapy services through my school.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. And so you felt like that was something that you like looked forward to, that you enjoyed doing?
Yes, I absolutely did. But with that, facing those like suicidal thoughts, and I desperately wanted to be with my mom. I wasn't near her. While I was with my father, she kind of spiraled into her addiction a little bit more, and then was in jail a couple of times. Yeah. And I think, so for those times she was in jail, I actually did quite well because I felt like she's okay. Like she's safe, and she would write me letters, and it was just a really beautiful, tender time for our relationship to kind of heal in those moments. But when she was back with her friends and doing her thing, that's when it became really difficult for me. So therapy, I think, could only do so much when my circumstances were still raging in the back of my mind.
Right.
Like I couldn't put it to rest, if you will.
And are you still believing the lies that like this is your fault and I'm the one to blame and working through all of those things?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, my sister and I still had a pretty tumultuous relationship, and I think she really did struggle with just how I processed things and how I confronted things, and it was just really difficult for her. And so I think I absolutely held on to that belief.
Yeah.
So, like going into your teenage years, you mentioned your mom was kind of in and out of jail, and you're kind of entering your teenage years. About how long did you stay with your dads?
I think it was about 2 years because it was 4th and 5th grade. And then my 5th grade year, my father could not afford the rent anymore that we had in this little house. And he was like, hey, do you have somewhere to stay while I figure this out? And so it was, I think, entering the summer month. Well, more towards the end of the school year, into the summer months. And one of my friends down the street was like, yeah, you can come live here. Wow. I mean, they were a little leery, like, why? And I was like, we're going to figure this out. Don't worry. Can we stay here? So my sister went to stay with a friend, and then I went to stay with a friend. And it was pretty hard. There was a lot of bullying that happened in that home. But it didn't last too long. Yeah. Until things changed.
Yeah. And then you went back to your mom?
Yeah. So my mom went to jail with felony charges for possession. And this is a really cool story that she was actually in a crack house, and this was probably the depth of her addiction. And the cops, the blue boys, as they called them, came in and they said, Susie, red boots, we need to talk to you. And they like pulled her out and they said, you're getting arrested. And she was the only one arrested. There was everyone's doing drugs in that house, but she was the only one arrested. And, like in that community, it's like they were all informants. But she thinks it's like they really wanted to take her. She believes that like they wanted to rescue her. Yeah. That's what she says. Yeah. Like she's like I think that they were like, you need to stop living this way and we're going to take you in. And even though this is your worst nightmare, like we're going to take you.
At least that's how the Lord saw it.
Yeah. And she's convinced of it. And I'm like, yes, I believe red boots. I still have her red boots.
Rescue mission. Yeah.
Even though they're tainted in so much, darkness, I still see it as a little symbol of hope of like, I don't know, God seeing us in the pit and being like, I'm going to take you out and change things. So my mom was in jail and I was still under the custody of my father, but living with a friend. And while my mom was in jail, she started to read her Bible and she started to work the 12 steps. And she also was presented with the opportunity to do something called the short program. And the short program was basically finish the 12 steps. She was on probation and she had to live in a halfway house for a certain amount of time. There might have been more to it, but at the time, that's what I can remember. So my mom got out of jail and I'll never forget the day where my stuff was packed up and I saw her car like coming up the road. And it was a really...
You were staying at the friend's house at this point? Yeah.
Yes. And she had finished her rehab. She's sober.
Well, no. So at that time, initially she stayed at the halfway house and I would stay at the friend's house and she would come pick me up on the weekends. Okay. And so we would go to the thrift store and just like load up bags and just have the best time. Yeah. And it was such a sweet thing. And even though we were sleeping in or staying at a halfway house, which I think I technically wasn't allowed to stay the night, but she would pick me up for the day. And sometimes I'd maybe go up to her room and stay the full day there. I was hearing these stories of these women who were really trying to like change their life. And the story goes for my mom, what really changed for her was she was in jail one day and she woke up and she felt like the Lord said, I don't have to live this way anymore. And I think I think we've all in her life, we're probably thinking that like, you don't have to live this way anymore. Yeah. But for her, I think that was a Holy Spirit moment of just it being so true down to her spiritual form. Like
it's different when it's the Lord's voice.
Yeah. She had to realize that like outside of herself.
Yes. That's exactly right. Yeah. And probably being removed from the temptation was huge. Right. But the crazy thing is addicts like often will relapse and then become sober and then relapse and become sober. And at this time we had not known anyone within our sphere of like the crack cocaine like world to really successfully just get out of it. They all go back
to it.
They all go back to it. So to see her make that decision and then so radically pursue like right living was truly my first miracle. Yeah. That was a miracle.
That is only the Lord can change your heart like that. Yeah.
Yep. And she credited so much of that to the Lord. Yeah. In the 12 Steps program, they use the word higher power. And there was a period of time she would use that because I think she wanted to be like PC within the community, but in private, she would be like, it was God. It was Jesus that has done this for us. And there were so many little God stories within that of like her getting a car and her getting a job with the Texas Department of Transportation, which is a state agency, like
with a felony charge.
With a felony charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so wild. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
God's
provision.
That's really cool.
So cool. Yeah, like the lady who interviewed her was like, I just felt like God was saying, like, give her a chance. So she like petitioned to hire my mom. Fresh out of jail, mind you. But she was in accounting and a phenomenal worker. Really, really smart woman. Just incredibly smart. So, yeah.
She just needed the opportunity. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Okay, so with you seeing her faith being like really transformed, where would you say, because I know like growing up you were going to, kind of in and out of different like youth groups and like things like that. Would you say that when you saw her faith change, that really changed your faith?
I think I still was so codependent with her that my trajectory of healing was so attached to hers. So my, I think, earliest forms of like, like healing and being under some sort of like structure or authority was actually the Cocaine Anonymous meetings that we would go to. So
you would go together?
I would go with her. Yeah. Every like, it was like every Sunday night or something.
I didn't even know that's allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would sell snacks and coffee in the back and go with her every single week.
Wow.
And it was really, I loved it. I loved it. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of crazy stuff, but at this point it's like no big deal. And I'm like 11 still. I'm like 11. But
that is wild, like that you've experienced that much in your
just running
like
the snack
grade.
counter.
Running. I have such good memories of that time. It was so sweet and it's so wonderful and really, really rich.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so would you say that is like, is it healing from then on out? Like where does the story go from?
That's a good question. So I'm entering middle school and my mom is working. She's working 2 jobs. She's working really, really hard. My father at this time had kind of surprisingly moved to California without telling us.
Okay.
Which was really hard. But I was in middle school. I was doing cheer a little bit and choir, which became my love. I was in choir, and my mom worked really hard to just provide for me to be able to do that because it costs money to be doing some of those programs.
Right.
But it was still really hard. My mom and I loved each other so deeply. She was my best friend, but she also greatly hurt me.
Right.
And to be with someone... You're trying to live a life now with someone you deeply love, but who has been your like predator. It's like really, really hard.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like an abusive relationship.
When you went back, she, finished the 12 steps when you went back to live with her. How was that relationship like? Did you fully trust her or like, how was that? Did you blame her for a lot of the things?
Or still afraid that she was going to just leave or...
I really didn't have fear she would leave, but I was constantly asking the question, do you really love me? Am I enough? Am I too much? That was a big question. And a lot of times what happened, and as I've processed more in therapy, what I know now to be true is that I really tried to act like I can be the adult, I can help, I can and then the child in me would just overflow with emotion. And I was so emotional. I mean, just really, really wrecked. And it was really hard on my mom, who had very little to offer me emotionally because it was, and she would often say, it's just too much, Sarah. It's just too much. And it was always so hard for me to hear that because it was like, wait, what do you mean then? Where do I go? Where do I go with this too muchness?
Yeah.
And I know what
you start feeling like you're too much and it's not just the circumstances around you. Yeah.
It was too much shame she felt. And that's what she said. Like,
herself.
Yeah. Like of just, I can't believe I put you through that. It was too much for her to have to deal with the repercussions of what she had done.
She couldn't face that guilt.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So she was almost more like deflective versus like diving deep to heal the pain.
She was really, really open. But the moment I started to kind of like need more than what she could offer, there was very explosive. A lot of really hard things said to me that were very difficult.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Just me feeling really upset, really angry, lashing out at her. And then instead of having like, no, Sarah, you can't behave that way. There's repercussions. She would just be really, really mean back. And then feel awful and come back and be like, hey, I'm really sorry. And then those moments were worth it. I was like, okay, that's what I wanted all along, was just like the repair, if you will. But that was a pattern we were in for a long time. We were both really hurting. We were both in a lot lot of pain, and we're just trying to figure out how to go from there.
Yeah. Okay.
What was high school like?
Yeah. High school, it was interesting. So
or
in
maybe
high school,
we've skipped ahead too far. I don't know. No. Middle school, 11, 12, 13,
yeah, so
going
13,
into high school.
13 years old, the internet became a thing in our home. And I had met another boy in the community.
Was this like AOL area?
Oh, yeah.
Or like what are we talking?
ASL.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Age, Sex, Live, if you know what that is.
Oh, I don't. About. I've never heard
You've
that.
Never heard this?
No.
My millennial is showing.
I know like the MySpace and the...
Yeah, so AOL.
Is that before?
AOL, there was like chat rooms.
Yes,
and you would meet people in chat rooms and you'd say ASL. And it like age, what's your age, what's your sex, and where do you live?
Oh.
And so in a very inappropriate way at that time, a 13-year-old, 12-year-old shouldn't have been on these things. But that was, what I did. So I was on a chat room and I met a boy who was in my community. He became my long-term boyfriend.
Okay.
That we'll touch on in a minute. But when I was 14, so I was like friends with the bad kids, friends with the good kids, friends with the popular kid. I just really wanted to be kind of in all of it. And I kind of didn't really have a true identity. I kind of floated and grifted around to these groups. And I don't think anyone really knew like who Sarah was. And I don't think I knew who Sarah was. So I think I was maybe a mystery or maybe weird, or I don't know what I was considered. But I think I really, since I had seen so much of what my mom had done in high school, I really didn't have like a whole bunch of desire to do all the like crazy things. So I would often like maybe go to a party or something and never drink or do the crazy thing. Cause I was like, I don't know. I did later in life, but at that time in high school, I didn't really. But I had met a boy and I was dating him, and then I'd also been invited to a youth group. So one of my friends, she invited me to an Assemblies of God church, and it was a youth group, and they were just so on fire. If you know anything about Assemblies of God.
Pentecostal is what we're talking about.
Yes.
I'm not very versed.
There's a lot of like emphasis on the Holy Spirit and gifts of the Spirit.
Yeah.
So tongues, prophecy, they really like anchor to the verse, baptism by fire.
Yeah.
And they believe like you're baptized in water, but then you're also baptized by the Holy Spirit.
There's a second baptism.
Yes, exactly. Which one of the things I loved about this youth group is that they just had this like really evident faith. Right? Like at this point, all I had really known about religion is that it was like restrictive and boring and like had nothing to offer me, but they just were so on fire that I was like, yes, I want that. Right? Like these
people, charismatic.
Maybe these people have the answers. Maybe they get it.
Yeah.
So
the worship is fun.
Worship is fun. Yeah. So I really, really, really enjoyed it. But, I quickly became super close with my pastor, my youth pastor at the time, and I became kind of like a youth leader. Even though I would have called myself a Christian, I still had a lot of very big questions.
Yeah.
A lot of really big things that I couldn't lay aside. And I also was like having sleepovers with my long-term boyfriend. So if you can imagine, even though I was like really trying to figure this faith stuff out, I really had like a lot on my back burner of like... like unresolved that I couldn't lay down. The idea of just surrendering all that, no, you can't just surrender all that pain. And at the time, that's the way I thought.
Do you feel like you were like looking back, are you like, I felt the Lord calling me to him, or were you just like, I'm just going to church because my friends are there?
I definitely felt like a closeness with the Lord in a way. I would say, like, I remember going to camp and we would stay up till like 1 a.m. and people are talking in tongues and people are like manifesting and there's all sorts of crazy stuff like happening. And I would be in the back till like 1 a.m. with my leaders, like, I want to pray in tongues. And I really wanted to just I think the belief that I had at the time was why I want to know, I want to have security. And if I have this gift that they're talking about, then I'll know I'm saved.
And like I'm in. Yeah.
I'm in. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And I had this like fear of like, oh, I'm not getting these things.
Was that the language that was being used? Salvation through speaking in tongues?
This was such a conversation that we often had. And they would say things like, and it was very confusing, like, no, you'll still go to heaven, but it would be really great if you could.
Yeah.
You'll probably still be in heaven. Like, it's not a salvation issue, but it's like a sanctification problem. And so then it was
like I'm not looking for probably.
Like your life here on earth is going to be a lot better if you have this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, okay, this is just also me wondering, but like, do you think sometimes people just like faked it so that they could?
I wondered that. And sometimes people
like say that they had it and they really didn't.
Yeah, it was like I was living two worlds. Like I'd be in the middle of this crowd and I'd hear all these people chanting all these things. And I'd have this Sarah that is like so liberal upbringing and like hated religion be like, these idiots, what are they doing rambling on, you know? And then I'd have this other little version being like, no, maybe they have like the secret and I want to be in on it.
That,
It's like I was battling these two different worlds, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, which one is real?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't have scriptural understanding for it. I mean,
Right.
they would try to, but at the end of the day, I didn't have a high value for scripture.
Yeah.
It just felt like that hadn't been proven to me
Yeah,
yet.
it's a lot of, and this is not a knock, but there is a lot of emotionalism in it kind of.
Yes.
So salvation, do you believe you were saved in the Assemblies of God Church at that like point of, 13, 14 years old?
I would probably say so.
Do you have a moment where you kind of prayed a sinner's prayer?
Oh yeah. I was the girl who did like recommits.
Yeah.
Every single time. Like, do you want to raise your hand? I was like, I need to make sure I'm like, every time I had an opportunity.
Baptize me every week.
Yes.
Every Sunday, every Wednesday, going to the altar. Yeah.
Yes, I was baptized. But it's so funny because it's still just a blip. And there's so many other things that had so much more of my attention that I don't see it as that much of an event. But I don't know if God sees it that way.
Were you going to church with your mom at that point?
No. My mom was still kind of she wasn't in a place of like really trusting authority or anything yet, or being in those circles.
She was like,
so
I found Jesus at 12 steps and he's going home with me.
That's exactly right. That was her
And
thing.
she was probably, I'm assuming, continuing going to meetings and stuff. Or maybe not.
Yeah, she was for a long time. I think
so that was
for like
kind
10
of
years.
probably, she probably justified that as her church, or kind of.
And she worked two jobs. She was just really busy. Like she didn't have a lot of time to do that. It wasn't a priority for her.
Yeah.
Do you remember at the time, like, I know you've kind of alluded to having like big questions that you wanted answered from God. Like, do you remember what those were? And
I mean, they're the hot button ones. How do you feel about the LGBTQ? That was a big thing because I grew up very liberal. I mean, my mom was a hippie, so there was just like a lot, even though there was like Christian values and maybe that she was maybe like conservative in some aspects, like we really had an open, like sex wasn't a bad thing in our home. Like it wasn't like, it was just openly talked about. Like I knew a lot about my mom's things. And so there was just like a lot of these big questions about, oh my goodness, so many things. Like, I think that was a big one.
Just like, how does God fit into this?
Suffering, like, how did that, why did that happen? Like, why did I go through all of that?
Yeah.
Like, why do I still have to walk in this world, like being a normal person, knowing and have seen all the things I've seen? Just really grappling with that.
Or like, why wasn't I rescued immediately?
That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah. Now, like the Sarah that you are today, like what would you say to Sarah back then?
Oh, I would just give her a hug. I would just love her. She was really trying. And I think that it's a process when you're in that much pain and you've gone through that much. They call it complex PTSD because it's complex. There's no just like, like reliving one event and trying to sort it out. I mean, there was layers and layers and layers of just like chaos that contributed to really false thinking. And so I would just give her a lot of love. I'd be really patient with her and just sit down with her and ask a lot of questions and just show her that I'm not going anywhere, really, is I think the big thing. But to pivot, that pastor that I was really close with, my boyfriend and I, my long-term boyfriend and I had broken up, and
And you're still in high school?
Yeah, I'm in high school. I'm like 16 at this time. And
was pornography still a big part of your life at that point?
Yeah,
because the internet was a thing now.
If even more so, probably, because it was so accessible. And again, it was normalized. Like that wasn't a weird thing in my home to have a struggle with. So it didn't feel like something that was bad.
Would you feel conviction towards it, or not really?
I would feel like maybe dirty. Like I don't really want people knowing I do this, but
especially not the youth pastor.
I think I kind of had, I think he knew. We were pretty open in our youth group about some of that stuff. And he would share with me like, this isn't ideal. And I think I had spurts where I tried not to, but it was so a part of like my coping of everyday life that I think it was just really difficult to give up that coping mechanism.
Yeah, you're like, this has been my kind of escape since I was 7.
Yep. Yeah,
this is what I'm going to run back to.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was something I could hide, no one was affected by it. That was a huge thing. Like, how does this affect anyone? But that when I broke up, when my boyfriend broke up, and my boyfriend and I had broken up in high school, my youth pastor became my ride to school. So that was actually really strange because he was very like rigid, like we're not gonna blur these lines ever. But then this became kind of something he was allowing. And then it became, I'm gonna give you a kiss on your cheek because that's how Jesus greeted his disciples.
Oh, no.
And then it became, hey, are you feeling okay? Is your back okay? Can I give you a massage? And I just was like, I loved this man so much that I think I was in denial, but then also maybe knew, but also was in denial, like constantly wavering of like, is this really happening?
Right.
Like, or maybe feeling like, if it goes any further, I would be able to stop it though. I'm Sarah. Right. I know how to, I know what he's up to if that's the case.
Or like his intentions aren't too bad, or
you're just minimizing and justifying the situation. But I found out right as this was unfolding that he was having an affair with another mom in the youth group. And that was hard. That was really, really hard. Really difficult because I think there was still so much of me at this time too who wrapped my salvation up around this figure of him and of like him being my leader, not Jesus being my leader, and my youth group being like my people, not Jesus being like my root of all of that. I found a lot of identity just being a part of that group.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Would you say you had church hurt from that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was a little bit of me being like, of course. This is, my mom's always told me church is never to be trusted. Yeah. Like, this isn't a shock to me. But then also inwardly being like very upset.
Yeah, you're like, these are my people. And I feel like I've been let down by them.
Yeah.
I think that something that I feel like that I want to touch on is just like church hurt a little bit. Because I know a lot of people have experienced that. In several different ways. And I think that we see a lot of times that is keeping people from Jesus or from his church, his bride, because of the way that people have, come in his name and like represented him, have hurt somebody in some sort of way. So I guess like what advice would you have for someone that is struggling with church hurt, and how would you just like recommend them moving forward, and how can they see the true Jesus in that?
Jesus also struggled with church hurt
quite
a bit. So much of his ministry was around confronting the religious leaders and saying, you're getting it wrong. You're trying to make this something that feels like you can control and that you have security in, and you're missing the point. And
pretty on the outside, dirty on the inside, kind of.
Yeah. And I don't think Jesus is any bit turned away by anyone's questions or pain or struggle with that. I think it's when we start to believe like, I'm going to stop taking this pain to Jesus, that the enemy then has, potential to skew things and to, that's what the devil's a deceiver, and he wants you to hate the church. He wants you to believe that it's not necessary, that you can do it on your own.
Yeah, I think it's very easy. I mean, you just hit on it. I think it's very easy to, when you are hurt by someone in the church, an imperfect person, it is very easy to start thinking, oh, that person is a Christian, therefore Jesus must be this way as well. And you start kind of attributing those negative things onto Jesus instead of just realizing, oh, that person was really broken and made a mistake and this, that, or the other. And at the same time, you know, we shouldn't excuse those actions, but it's like, yeah, you're right. It's a nasty lie that it's very easy to believe.
Yeah. I think the more we can just anchor to God's truth and what he does ask us to do and seek, there is, say you are in a place where you're leaving a church and it's really hard. There are so many amazing communities out there, or churches, or different flavors of church that you can find. And I love our church so much. I know that I'm married to the man who, you know, helped make it, but I'm really thankful that I don't have to go church shopping, because I think it can be really hard to discern some of these things. And I think that's where people get really hung up. Yeah. But I would just say, don't give up. Know that God's there to guide you. The Holy Spirit is just so present. And yeah, it's there. There's a church, there's a community that can sit with you in your pain and help you get out of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes church shopping, what we've found is church shopping will show you kind of a lot of different flavors of Christianity, I guess. And then, but you find the same Jesus in all of them.
Yeah.
And then you start to think, oh, okay, Jesus is the same everywhere. He doesn't change.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. But people are, unfortunately, we're really broken.
Well, I can relate to that because, you know, my whole life I was searching for security in people, right? Like my parents couldn't provide that for me. My teachers couldn't provide that. CPS couldn't provide that. My sister, all these people, right? And then my youth pastor couldn't provide it for me. And I think I slowly but surely, through all of those failures, started to see, okay, yeah, you're just looking at all the wrong places, which is really sad. But I think especially the Western culture like struggles with this because we have so much security built in to just our foundation that we really think we're entitled to and I don't want it to sound like, oh, just suffer and get over it. I don't want it to sound like that either, but I do want people to hear that Jesus is enough. Yes. And even in your darkest moments and even when you've been let down the most, like Jesus will meet you there and he can supply you with everything that you need.
Yeah, I would even just add that the suffering isn't going to waste either. Yes. Like Jesus is going to use that, and on the other side, it's going to become a victory story instead of something that you have to look back on and wince. Yeah.
And I think too, I feel like what's been kind of put on my heart right now is just like hearing about your mom, like kind of getting to rock bottom and then realizing like Jesus is enough. Him showing you like time and time again, like these people unfortunately will fail you. Yeah. And I even think about like Glenn as my husband, like I adore you and I love you more than anybody in the world, but like Jesus is next level. And like, I think he strips down these idols and these walls that we have, these things that we put on a pedestal, and we realize like he truly is enough and he truly is different. Like he is God. He is other.
Couldn't agree more.
So I think I think all of our stories and everyone's story is kind of realizing you get to the bottom of yourself and you get to the bottom of everything and everything is stripped away and he's like the one constant and the one security that we can go to. Yeah,
we just touched on kind of that very thing in the last podcast where you mentioned you had the question of it, like why is God why did he allow me to go through this stuff? And it's like, well, that's maybe not necessarily God, but if he is allowing it, it's for a reason, and there's formation in that, and you know, the big question for a lot of people is why do good things or bad things happen to good people? And when in reality the longer you live, the more you find out there are no good people.
That's exactly
There's only a
right.
good God.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
I think like, yeah, I mean, it took a long time for me to figure that out. And sometimes I wonder if I even believe it sometimes, but yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah, I think too, a lot of it, like you said, we love like comfort and security. And it's like, if we look into the Word of God, like we are not promised that we're not going to have suffering here. But he does promise that he'll be with us and that he's overcome.
Yes.
So yeah, that's just really encouraging. Yeah, I would say, and just so redemptive too for you to be in like such a healthy church body today. Because I think, again,
and I married a youth pastor.
Yes, we married a youth pastor.
Not intentionally.
I mean, like what kept, I guess, like from that point when you're experiencing all of these things and you're like, man, like I thought this was supposed to be another safe space. Like how do you continue on with faith?
Where did you go from the youth pastor? Guys, we interrupt this conversation because we realized it was going long and we did not want to miss anything or even stop the conversation. So we are going to do a part 1 and a part 2. And so you guys are just going to have to stick around till next week to hear the rest of Sarah's story. Thank you.